Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and earn even more money. All in one place, and it's for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup looks like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. Best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we feel like having options like video podcasts, Q&A, and polls has let us be creative on a whole other level. I highly recommend you give it a try. So download Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Welcome back, X's and T podcast fans. It's Danny here, and I love the fact that I get to come on here and share stories with you guys. Today, I actually have a guest who is here to share his story and speak on some pretty tough topics. So I do want to add a trigger warning. There's going to be a lot of discussion about the topics that we kind of started with in the beginning of this whole podcast: domestic violence, potentially sexual assault, potentially death, just things that are very sensitive. So if that's something that you don't want to hear, totally understand. Check out the next episode. But I do want to say, I really hope that you do stick around, because I think that this story is so important and this person is so brave for coming forward. So with that being said, I would love to introduce my guest, Darian. Hi, Darian. How are you today?
Great. How are you guys?
Doing great. Doing great. So I'm really excited because you had found my podcast through somebody that you know.
Just another day scrolling on Instagram, and I seen that a couple of people that I went to school with were on your podcast, and kind of just let my thumb do some exploring, and I found myself on your page, and then found myself messaging you.
Yeah, which I'm so grateful for. Yeah. So actually, we are here to kind of share your story. What was it that really compelled you to want to tell your story like this?
Well, there's two big things for me, and the main thing was, so I'm just going to dive right into it. Sexual assault happens a lot more than people expect it to, and to people that you wouldn't expect it to happen to. And a lot of those people are men. And I feel like society puts a different expectation on men than they do for women, which is fair. But at the same time, we don't have a lot of the resources that women do. And that's part of why I'm here.
Yeah. No, you bring up a fantastic point. And that's true. A lot of like shelters that are available, they're women specific, the demographic that this is catering to. I think it's really important that, we're able to have more resources for everybody. Everybody should feel safe to be able to go to a shelter and not be turned away because of your gender or how you identify or anything like that. Like, it's unfortunate that that's kind of where we are in society. So I definitely agree with you that there is a different standard, and it's just not something that men are talking about. I can definitely say that I have come in contact with males who they have like sexual assault and horrible things in their past, and they're not as comfortable disclosing this stuff. And a lot of the times it's kind of brought up in like a roundabout way, kind of like inferring that this is what happened, but not outright saying it. And a lot of the time I feel like it's out of fear for judgment. Is that how you feel about it?
Absolutely. I was actually just talking about it with my wife today, and it boils down to pride and ego. And I'm guilty of it myself. I have a big ego, and I have a lot of pride, and I want to be the best. I want to be that guy that people come and ask for bike advice or anything along like that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, I don't even know how to explain it honestly, but it's hard to meet the expectations that people put on you as a man, especially when things that don't happen to most people happen to you, and you want to still be filling that expectation that society puts on you.
Yeah, definitely. There is a large expectation for men to be like seen and not heard almost. Talking to my significant other about this recently, and we have a dark sense of humor over here. So he was kind of just joking around about, yeah, I'm here to support people. I'm not here to bitch, is what he said. And it sucks
Yeah.
because, yeah, somebody gave him like that impression that it's like if a man says something, you're bitching about it. And then it's somehow in such a misogynistic, like derogatory way, it compares you to females. I do just want to kind of go over a little bit. I know you just mentioned that you would like to be the guy who gives bike advice. So who is Darian today?
My daily routine honestly looks like waking up in the morning, ride my motorcycle to my work where I work on motorcycles all day, and usually ride my bike home after that, eat supper, have a shower, ride my bike some more, or play some video games with a couple of friends I met from the States, and go to bed after watching some TV with the wife and taking the dogs for a walk. And I'm a pretty simple man, honestly. If I'm not doing that, I'm either helping my friends with their bikes. Like yesterday, I changed my buddy's sprocket and chains. And I mean, I mow my grandma's lawn every now and then.
That's so nice of you.
She's awesome.
That's so wholesome. Like I love that that's kind of where you are today. I mean, I know that you and I had talked a lot about your story prior to this, and just kind of knowing what you've been through and the life that you have today is truly amazing. So I have to ask, does your wife ride motorcycles too?
She's a really good backpack, but she does not ride her own.
Got it. Got it. But it's cool that you can kind of share that hobby with the person that you love the most, which is pretty cool. Now that we know who you are today, we're going to kind of reel it back a little bit. What was your childhood like? Like, what are some of your earliest memories that you can remember? Some really positive things that maybe you remember about your childhood.
Well, my older cousin, he's 3 or 4 years older than me, and I never had any elder siblings, so he was kind of the guy that filled the big brother role for me most of my life. And my favorite memories are honestly chasing him around the block on my bike while he was on his bike, which was obviously way bigger and faster. But riding bikes around the neighborhood with him, always knowing that I could count on the guy. And he actually was kind of the main reason that I got into bikes and cars in the first place.
That's awesome. And then for your cousin to have been so close to you, I love that. So are you and your cousin today still pretty close?
Yeah, actually, he lives like 5 minutes down the street from me.
No way. That's
Yeah.
so cool. Well, shout out. I know that there's so much darkness. I really love the fact that you can still have such positive, really impactful memories. And so during this time, what was your life like at home? Like, what was your relationship like with your parents?
It's kind of hard to say parents, honestly, but my mother was, she had me fairly young. I was with her for the first 2 years of my life, 3 years of my life. And then she moved about an hour away and started going to school for, I think it was accounting or something like that. But I lived with my great grandma, whose lawn I just mowed a couple days ago, who also lives right between my cousin and I's house. So on the way over to his house, I can stop at grandma's and say hi. But
That's
I lived with
awesome.
her until I was, I think until the end of grade 2. So about 7 or 8 years old. And day to day life was pretty simple. Go to school, come home for lunch, go back, ride bikes with the guys around the block, or play cops and robbers or army, and repeat the process.
So during this time, I know that you said that you really just had your mom. And did you have a relationship with your dad during this point, or was he around?
He wasn't really around. I think he was shift working or something like that. But they split up around the time I was a year old or so, and their relationship was never the best. So kind of more lean towards my mom because he wasn't around in the first place.
No, I get it. And that's again, those family dynamics, everybody's family is different. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. Today, I love that we can actually look at that and say that this family is this way and this family is this way. And we don't have to look at those kids as different. Did you ever feel, because I know our generation when we were young, the view of that was so different. Did you as a kid just remember at all being like judged or feeling judged because your family may have been a little different?
Oh, absolutely. It does not matter looking back on it, but when I was in middle school, that was around the time I kind of started making legitimate friends because I knew I was going to stay around that place for a while. I went from Medicine Hat to Calgary to Edson, which is about total 800 and some kilometers difference apart. But once I moved to Edson was when I started grade 5, and then into middle school, so grade 6, grade 7, grade 8. I think that was the hardest time, honestly, was because I was trying to establish who I was and trying to figure out what kind of friends I wanted and what people I wanted to actually be around, rather than putting on somewhat of a mask. And just, I was that Play-Doh kid. I would conform to whatever expectation or form everyone else was fitting, and I'd just do my absolute best to fit in, even if it wasn't my jive or my jam. Or like, I went from city slicker kid to country kid to that dirt bike kid to like army cadets, and I just never figured out what I wanted to be until I found motorcycles, and I was like, okay, yes, this is my thing.
Yeah, definitely. And do you feel like what you were going through during these moments, do you feel like that had kind of an impact on maybe people pleasing or becoming what people wanted you to be?
Oh, absolutely. I still catch myself being a people pleaser to this day. And to loop back to things that people said when I was in school was I remember kids calling me poor kid because I had dandruff, which made no sense to me. And it really bugged me. And it kind of was one of those things that stuck. Like even now, I want to look good when I'm out in public or when I'm at work or when I'm riding my bike because I don't want people to say, oh, look, that guy's broke. He's poor. I just want to be normal, I guess.
Yeah, you want to be seen for you, not for this, I don't know, stereotypical things. I mean, when you think about those times, when you're being your most judged, right? And it sucks because as a kid, or especially back then, no one is thinking, what is going on in this person's life? Am I going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back? I'm going to pick on this person because they have one trait that I feel is negative, but there's no thought to what is he going through? Like, what is going on at home?
Yep.
And that's really unfortunate because and it was during this time, wasn't it, that really was maybe, I don't want to say the height of what you were going through, but it was definitely like around the same time, right?
Yeah, it was around the height of it, I would say, because I would go down to Medicine Hat every second weekend or every weekend. That was actually, yeah, that was the height of when my abuse was the worst because it was a kid that lived across the street from my great grandma's, and it was weird. Every time that I went down there, he knew that I was there, and he could like manipulate me, and I think he knew how to manipulate my family as well because he would message me on Messenger and say, "Hey, you want to hang out? Come over. Let's play a game." And I'm like, "No, I'm okay." And then he'd come to the door and be like, "Can I hang out with Darian? Can Darian come out and hang out?" And I'd make a fuss about it, but they'd be do the typical parent thing, "Oh, just go hang out, go play, go have fun." And it's like, "No, I'm not having fun, but oh, okay, I'll just do as I'm told."
Yeah. Wow, you know what? That's kind of like scary in a way. And I say that as a parent because and I hope that the rise of social media and sharing stories like this is helpful to teach people, especially the upcoming generation, that is a red flag. When your child doesn't want to go hang out with somebody and then forcing them to. I guess at some point somebody could have said like, "Hey, like why do you not want to?" Do you feel like if somebody had asked you why during that time that you would have explained why?
Oh, I think honestly, I think I would have spilled the beans, but that's the 26-year-old Darian talking, and I think 12-year-old, 10-year-old Darian would have been a completely different story. I knew this guy since I lived at my great grandma's house, so since I was about a year or so old, 2 years old, 3 years old. Yeah, well, since I could ride a pedal bike, let's say. So about 3 or 4 years old, I've known this kid. Well, not kid, but guy. I think he's 7 or 8 years older than I am right now. And I didn't realize that I was being groomed till about the time I was 18, 19. And it's kind of hard to talk about it, honestly. It's a little embarrassing because
Yeah.
yet again, the expectations that society puts on males is really troubling to meet, especially when you're coming from this point of view. But yeah, he that guy groomed me since the second he could actually even think about it, and it was really hard to get away from that guy.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's okay. You can take your time. You can say what you want. You can say what you like, or you can not say things. Like it's okay. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's the floor is yours. But I mean, when you're talking about grooming, right? Grooming, I think people don't recognize the red flags of grooming. And I think it's becoming more and more recognized of what was going on. I know so many people, even like our age or even a little bit older, who maybe just realized like as of recently, like, oh shit, like I had no idea that was what grooming was is like.
Right.
And usually, which kind of speaking to grooming itself, I feel like most people, when they do think of grooming, they do think of sexual assault or sexual abuse, which is absolutely valid. I think it's also important to note that grooming can happen in other spaces. I think that it's important that parents out there know, like, it's not just somebody like in person, like on the internet. That's a conversation of just meeting somebody. It takes somebody 8 minutes to groom a child. And that's so, like, that's sad. But I think what you're doing and how you're speaking about it is really important because we're hopefully getting that point across. Pay attention to these things because it's kind of like somebody's speaking to you without using words because
Yeah,
manipulators, right? They're very cunning. They know what to say, they know when to say things, they know when to like tell you to keep secrets and how to word that, but they're not going to do it in front of your parents.
exactly.
And are there any like red flags, like looking back at that, you're kind of like, man, I really wish this was more blatantly obvious to my mom or to my grandma or to who, whichever adults were around?
Yeah, I'd often try to think about what would have made it more obvious, like coming from a kid's point of view of how to say, "Hey, I need help," instead of doing what I did. For example, like I acted out a lot. I would just do like petty shit. I'd go steal out of a candy store, or I'd get in trouble at school, and I'd make up little white lies to cover it up. Like I'd say that my homework went missing because I got beat up, but really there was a note in my agenda, and I didn't want my mom to see it out of fear of being told that I was bad, or just like small little things that wouldn't make any sense. But
Yeah.
the biggest thing for me was I feel like coming at it from an adult point of view with siblings that are under 12 years old. If I was to send my siblings to go hang out with somebody and they were like visually hesitant, like looking around or kind of like, okay, I'd ask a couple questions, be like, hey, is there something going on, or like, why don't you want to go there? I can kind of tell that you're not really up to it. What's up? But my family always kind of shrugged it off and was like, oh, you'll be fine. Just do it. Just suck it up.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No, you're totally right. And with visual cues or acting out. And yeah, that really makes a lot of sense because how else can you express your emotions, especially when, maybe it's not something that is as discussed. I mean, do you remember as a kid ever being like taught different like types of like red flags and maybe they wouldn't have been called red flags back then, but maybe some sort of like stranger danger things or anything like that?
Not really, honestly. Like the typical, if somebody asks you to come look for their dog, don't get in their car, but never anything of serious nature, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, I have to agree with you. It was very similar in our home. It was just kidnapping was, I think, the biggest concern.
Yeah.
I think, what's interesting is that as a young girl, I was taught that if you're in trouble, like if somebody's trying to harm you, don't yell rape, yell fire.
Fire. Yeah.
Like the fact that was not taken seriously by adults so much that they had to tell us to yell fire if we were actually being approached inappropriately by an adult or even by somebody older. That's sad.
Right.
And even do you have any like recollection of even in school? I don't know how it is over there, but I know for us, towards the end of like fifth grade, going into like middle school, so like sixth through eighth grade, so when they really start to have sex ed, and for us, they didn't really touch upon on any sort of like things. It was more of like again the kidnapping aspect.
Yeah, yeah, it was more or less the same here. Like we learned the science of how everything worked, but we never were taught like this is okay, this is not okay, which I feel like should really be taught in schools, not just the math of it more or less.
1000%. Yeah. I say that all the time. Like, I feel like if one of my biggest goals could ever be accomplished, it would be to be able to speak in schools because I can only speak again statistically for the United States, but domestic violence starts at as young as 11 years old. That is like an abusive partnership, abusive boyfriend or girlfriend. But you could even go a length further. Like, there's abusive friendships,
Yep.
and those can become very predatory very fast because, and you can choose not to answer this question or not, but did you consider your abuser just a friend, somebody
I,
that you
I did,
like
yes, I
connected
did
with?
for quite a while actually. I kind of looked up to the guy, which is I think why why it began in the first place. He was and is in the military, and he on the outside, he's a really cool guy. He's like textbook what you want to be. But behind closed doors, he's a fucking monster. And, it kind of hurts me to say that out loud because he's not one of those people that you would expect to be that kind of person. And I feel, as I feel violated for not defending myself or for letting it happen in the first place.
Yeah. And you know what? That's so much more common than I think people realize is that, and maybe it's just because I listen to a lot of true crime, but it's so like scary almost when somebody that you've seen in the community as somebody who was maybe active with children or with helping the elderly, or they're just really, like you had said, somebody that you kind of look up to, somebody who you would never think. And then all of a sudden it's like, I mean, and at least in these other stories, it comes out that like this person was actually like really sinister behind closed doors. I mean, even in this show that I mentioned before, it's called Undercover Underage. And this lady, Rue Powell, she started this organization where like she takes adults or even herself and they dress up like minors to try to catch predators online. And it's really fucked up. But some of these people are like in law enforcement or they are camp counselors for children. They are
Yep.
in these, or even I think one of them was a social worker.
Honestly, I fully condone those kinds of shows. Like, catch all of them and throw the book at them.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because it's unfortunate how common it is that I think almost every friend or person that I had as a friend and maybe lost contact with. And maybe it's just because I attract like dark people and like traumatized, messed up people. But it's so common that they've either been like sexually abused by a family member or they were sexually abused by somebody that they knew in the community, or they were groomed by an older like person who proclaimed that they were a significant other. I mean, it's so like fucked up how common it is. And what's really fucked up too is I know somebody who was abused by a family member. And then this person, like the family pretty much just brushed under the rug. Like
Yeah.
it was, well, we just don't talk about that. That's the family secret. Like this. And it breaks my heart because it doesn't matter how other people view the trauma. That person will always be traumatized for the rest of their life. And ignoring it only makes it worse.
Right.
So does your family now, do they know everything that has happened?
Yes and no. There's a few people in my family that know the gist of it, and a minor percentage of those few that know the gist of it know the bad, dark details, which more or less is just my grandmother and my older cousin. But even then, I didn't tell them very much.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And I know that you said that this went on for quite a while. And that's like, I don't want to say that that's okay. I just want to let you know, like, there's nothing that you did wrong. Doesn't matter how long it went on. There's so much that is behind manipulation. Do you feel like because of how long that you had experienced this, that makes it even harder to speak about it?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like you're right about like how long it went on doesn't. It's not that it's okay, but I almost feel like I am weak for not putting my foot down earlier or for not standing up for myself earlier. And I feel like people will look at me and not judge me, but like make fun of me almost for it, as if like I'm so used to being the ass end of a joke that talking about it, I feel like people are gonna say, "Oh, you liked it or you wanted it. That was what you wanted. You did it because you want." Like, and that's the part that makes it the hardest for me is fear of judgment.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of victim blaming that happens with people who are fucking ignorant. And anybody who does that is like actually bottom of the barrel stupid. Like that is the lowest form of intelligence that a person can have. And even if they don't think so, I think so. Because and for people to say that, or to even like the fact that you have that fear is valid because I'm sure somewhere along the line you have seen that either happen to somebody else or heard about it, or gosh, even in Hollywood on a fucking movie, seeing that people don't understand. And that's where I feel like education is so important because somebody who is in an abusive relationship or who is being abused in any way, shape, or form, there's a power dynamic, like a very strong power dynamic. This person has, one, made you feel fear of them, but there's also kind of this like, it's hard to explain. At least I don't know how to explain it for anything that I've been through. There's a reason why we stay in these situations for so long, or why we go back to it, or why it's hard to say no, or why it's hard to leave, because the level of manipulation is so rampant. And here's the thing too, that maybe this will put perspective a different way. And I'm going to kind of go back to the other topic where I'm talking about joining a cult, because people will ask, well, how did you get dragged into that? Right? Nobody is above a cult. Nobody is above being manipulated. It's the fact that these people who are manipulating people, they find the right pain points. They find the right things to say because they get to know you, and they absolutely find ways. They're like, okay, I know that this person likes to hear this, and they use that against you.
Absolutely. Just like my grandma, the poor girl, she just got taken for, I think it was 3,000 American dollars
No way.
on a cryptocurrency scam. The poor girl.
That's devastating.
Horrible. Absolutely horrible. And I was telling her the whole time too. I was like, something about this seems fishy. And this lady, I don't trust it. And now it's gone. But circling back to manipulation, actually, I feel like people who haven't either understood that they are being manipulated, or have actually been manipulated, people that haven't been manipulated aren't going to understand it, and they're going to make fun of, or they're going to judge people who have been manipulated or groomed into a situation that they feel either trapped in, or they are trapped in, and in the respect of like a cult, or like one of those pyramid schemes for buying like makeup or beauty products and stuff. Like you spent so much money on it, and now you're locked in, but what are you going to do with it? Because now we got your money, but you can't have it. So you find yourself trapped, which in the same aspect is how I felt. I felt trapped because if I said something about it, there were three options. Either option one, I was going to get bullied by the kids I went to school with. Option two, my parents weren't going to believe me, and they were going to call me a twisted little, a twisted little sex addict kid or something like that. Or people are going to think that I'm not straight, and that seriously bugged me.
Which is so fucked up. That last one, especially. That last one kills me because it is such a reality, especially for men. I will never understand where this toxic masculinity got to this point. The fact that as a man, you can have all of this trauma, but you have to hold on to it because there's some sort of negative connotation that they're using to blame you somehow. And you then have this fear of like, I can't talk about it now because people are going to have this view of me. And like, yeah, I mean, especially back in like the early 2000s. I know when I was in middle school, high school, like that was, people were using the F slur. People were like, just if a guy even remotely had a slight, what was considered at that point, feminine interest, that person was gay. Like there's
Yep.
no way. And then for some reason they're ostracized. And even if somebody is gay, like that's totally fine. That's totally acceptable. Like sexual abuse does not equate to being gay, or it doesn't even equate to being mentally ill. Like you're still you, but all of this happened and now you have to keep it to yourself purely because of that. And the thing is like sexual abusers, they come in all shapes and sizes and forms. I mean, this person was still a minor, right? When you were a minor, when all of this kind of began.
Yep.
And that's common. I feel like stereotypically, we still need to get out of this mindset that like it's just this old white man who is a predator. That's how I was taught about it. I'm not serious. Like, and just a quick disclaimer, you guys. We have already confirmed that both of us have a dark, fucked up sense of humor. So if we're laughing, it's how else do we cope with trauma? Laugh and be fucked up in the head. I mean, to be honest. So don't be offended.
I'm picturing an old dude that's like 250 pounds with like a 5 o'clock shadow and a white, really thin skullet going on. And like,
I mean, that's how they painted it out to be, though. Like, that's exactly it. Nobody was saying, hey, this type of behavior can start at a young age. I mean, a lot of it starts out like that. Sexual abuse, that's where the first step usually happens. And not to give rhyme or reason, not to give excuses, a lot of the times it happens because that's what they see at home.
Right.
And I feel like that's not something that is even talked about how if your child is coming and expressing something to you, right, about something that they saw at a friend's house or something that a kid said at school, it's like nowadays I feel like it's more common to tell our kids like they're probably going through a lot of shit at home. Like there's probably some things going on behind closed doors that we don't know about.
Yep.
But I was never told that back in the day. It was always, oh, that kid's just being an asshole. Or like, oh, that's a bad person. Just stay away from them. But
Yep.
in all reality, like what was causing that to happen?
Right.
Especially like you were saying before, you're acting out and like kind of going back and like looking at people and knowing a little bit about red flags now. There are definitely like kids as young as 8 years old that I can recognize and look back and be like, something happened to that kid because maybe at 8 years old they were talking about sex. Like, and sure, I know we're kind of there's something different though about the kids who are talking about it and the way that they're talking about it, or the way that maybe they might even be trying to act it out. And I
Yeah.
can think about kids that I knew who were like that. And as an adult, I'm like, oh fuck, like something really sinister was happening at home at that young of an age. Do you kind of have kind of that
Absolutely.
same viewpoint when you think about maybe kids
Yeah,
you knew?
yeah, for sure. There's a couple I can actually think about right now that, I probably should have treated those kids a little bit better, to be absolutely honest.
Hindsight's always 2020. I mean, we really don't know though. Like, and that's the thing we can kind of infer with what we know now. Now that you're an adult and you kind of look at the way that you view the world, how do you think that this has had an impact on you?
It kind of made me hate people in general as a whole. It's weird. It's really weird. It tipped the scale both ways for me drastically. I'm not much of an in between kind of person. I either really like you or I really, really fucking don't like you. But at the same time, there's some people that I really, really don't like, if that makes any sense. Like,
Yeah.
I got this guy that I ride bikes with all the time. And, he's deep down, I know he's a super, super outgoing, kind, loving guy, but he has to be the best. And I don't know if it's if it's my ego or if it's just if it's human nature or what, but it seems like no matter what I do, if I say something, he has something to say about it. If I do something, he has something to say about it. He always has to lead or he always has to be the best, but at the same time, so do I. And I feel like that clashes a lot, but also at the same time, we're not actively in a competition with each other. I think what's going on is in a competition with ourselves up here, and we project it onto the other guy because like I love the guy to pieces, but there's some times where I just want to kick him off of his bike into the ditch.
Oh, definitely. I know somebody like that too, where I feel like I love this person, but that dominant know-it-all personality is just such a hard one to get used to, especially when you yourself have more of like a, I don't know, what do they call it, type A, very dominant personality.
I'm not sure if I am though either. I'm
I mean,
either
that's true. That's fair.
I'm either at the front of the class and I'm the loudest person there, or I'm at the very back and I'm like kind of just watching and learning. There's no really in between for me, and I'm not sure who I am sometimes, I think, to be absolutely honest.
I mean, I had a therapist tell me one time, people who have been through trauma, especially some sort of like sexual abuse or abuse from somebody in their life that's supposed to be a safe person, it is not uncommon for people to lose themselves because during that time when your brain is developing, when you're supposed to be learning all of these very core things that we're supposed to take with us for the rest of our lives, you're hindered by that because something is going on, something is happening to you that is very confusing and it goes against everything that you're supposed to be taught. So, I mean, it totally makes sense. And honestly, I can relate too.
And I think I think he helped me realize something right there actually, is I think that being left alone at night while I lived in Calgary with my mom and her leaving me with my great grandma and all that stuff just happening to me, I feel like that makes me forever searching for approval from not just someone, but everyone, because I'm scared that people won't see me for my worth and they'll kick me to the side yet again.
Yeah. I mean, that's a totally valid fear, especially when you have, and again, this is no shame to your family dynamic whatsoever, because again, I am like literally no contact with my mother, but it's that level of inconsistency in your life where because especially when you're moving from school to school, or you're in this position where you have to make all new friends. You have to start getting to know people, and
Yep.
you kind of develop this habit, like you had said, that you were what you called the Play-Doh kid. You were everything for everybody else. You had to mold yourself to fit in, to feel validated, and that sticks with you, especially through adulthood. And it does kind of, I think you're right, feel like a constant searching of like, who actually am I? And it really is, because at those young ages that consistency is so important, and unfortunately some of us didn't get that.
Well, it's just like I know this is a quote from someone like it's not Churchill or Sun Tzu, but it's someone like that, and they said they lost themselves trying to be the person that everyone else wanted them to be.
Yeah.
I
I
think the
don't know who
quote
said
was,
it, but
"Don't lose yourself being the person others want you to be." Yeah, that's what it was.
yeah, and that's very profound. I mean, it's so true. And do you think now, when you were in high school and you were kind of nearing the end of it, was there any part of you that even at that point were like, I want to take control of my life? And then at what point did you decide, like, I am actually going to take control of my life?
I didn't quite make that decision until after high school. In high school, I was kind of still just trying to fill a stereotype and fill an expectation. But actually, the night of graduation, that all kind of went to shit. And that was where I started more or less breaking down the old me and trying to rebuild whoever I was going to turn into.
Yeah. And that's such a scary place to be, because there's a lot of darkness and confusion, and I feel like there's so much that goes into that, especially when you've kind of forced yourself to be somebody, and then it does. I mean, it's a facade. Every facade, I feel like, comes crumbling down at some point.
Yep.
And you said after high school. So what was it that kind of just kept you going?
The things that always have kept me going the most is honestly, I've kind of had this thought that I can't force my time, and there's nothing that's gonna make it come quicker. There's just everyone's got a clock and it's gonna run out somehow, some way. So I didn't really have terrible thoughts a lot of the time. I did try to make an attempt in grade 10 just because I felt like I was at an end. I kind of just had enough of being told that, I wasn't good enough, and felt like every corner that I turned, I just met ridicule and belittlement from everybody and anybody that I could find. So I figured, I mean, what was the point if I'm not wanted by anyone and I don't want myself? Why would I want to be here in the first place? And obviously it was a mistake. And the second I did it, I feel so bad. I scared the shit out of my teacher and my whole classroom. I bet you they have trauma themselves from my actions. And it was a bit of a turning point that day, honestly, because I didn't exactly care how it ended up, but seeing the reactions from the people that I was around and the people that actually truly did care was a really hard reality check, and it made me feel pretty bad, selfish, honestly. But the things that kept me going the most is the hope that life would be better somehow, some way, and the idea of like time heals everything. It really does, but it's not easy in that in between time. It doesn't just fix itself like a light switch. You can't just twist a couple wires and be good to go, or you can't just take a pill and be good to go. Like I had a lot of things I had to work through to get to where I am today, and it was not easy.
I think the
But
way that you put it is amazing. I think that that's actually so profound and so inspiring, actually, because I think that when we're in those dark moments, especially when you're young, right? So to anybody out there who maybe is a younger listener, or somebody who genuinely feels like you're probably at your wits' end with life, it's so much. I know it's easier said than done. I really do, and I have so much respect for people and pushing through what they're going through. But I truly do believe that time, and I agree with you, that time will heal, and you don't have to feel alone forever. There is a light at the end of the tunnel somewhere. And I know, especially in those young years, especially in the teenage years, it just feels so much stronger. All of this stuff, it's like this is never going to end. Oh my gosh. And then you're like almost turning 30, and then you look back and you're like, that went by so fast.
exactly. Like it's been 6 years years since I was last abused. And it's mind-blowing to me that I can actually say that. Sorry, ADHD moment. We're gonna loop back to the time fixes everything. And when I said that the in-between time isn't easy, it's not. But it doesn't have to be so fucking hard that it feels like an eternity, that it feels unbearable. That's where a lot of my favorite times in my life have happened. There was days where I felt like I had nothing going for me and I just didn't like who I was and where my life was at all. And on a whim, I packed up my truck and I went for a drive into the mountains and I watched a sunset. I went for a hike with my dog and I took a day to myself to just enjoy life, to think about what I want to do. And instead of conforming to everyone's expectations, just take my life into my own hands for even a day. And I've seen some of the most beautiful sights in my whole life by myself with my dog, and I'm happy about it. Like, if people can just find a hobby that they actually enjoy, that passes the time and it makes it feel like hours or minutes or seconds, just roll with it. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, whether it's drawing or dirt biking, unicycling, taking remote controls apart and putting them back together. Like, it doesn't matter. If you like it, fucking do it.
Yeah. And then it becomes something that's so meaningful. So what's really interesting is when you're talking about this in between and how you did have some good moments and or something that kind of you fell in love with that kind of got you through it. Mine's kind of silly, but you totally unlocked a memory for me. Mine was The Office. That is when I discovered the show The Office. I'm actually wearing an Office shirt right now. That show will always mean something to me because it was kind of like the friends, if you will, that I kind of leaned on, that I had, that there was no judgment. There was just like I could watch this and kind of lose myself in it. That was, I think, kind of my quote hobby that really got me through. But I mean, the fact that you can say 6 years, that is so amazing. And now, you're married, you have your like almost, I think you said your dream job, and that's fucking fantastic. So, now that you're in this period of time in your life, what is some advice that you would be able to give maybe somebody who has been in your situation and might be afraid to say something?
If somebody is in that situation, which I have no doubts in my mind that there's got to be at least one person listening to this that this is going to help. Just if they have like a person that they know they can trust and look up to and talk to with zero judgment, that isn't going to steer them in the wrong direction, take 10 minutes to call them or talk to them face to face. Because how do I explain this? It's better to try and to fail, as scary as it is, than to not try at all, especially with something like that. Because who's to say they try to put their foot down with their abuser and they go missing or something worse? If nobody knows what's going on, nobody's ever gonna know. So tell someone that you trust, and the absolute worst case scenario is they don't believe you and you cut ties with that person because they aren't fucking worth it, and you tell somebody else until you find someone that's gonna help you. Because you can't just give up, you can't just stop, you can't let people walk all over you.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's such a good point. Like, don't be discouraged by that because speaking out is so much more important. And I think you even brought up a good point that I'd never even thought of. You're like, well, if they go missing, like, no one's going to know. No one's going to be able to look for you. No one's going to be able to have any sort of idea. And even just one person knowing, that's huge because that
Yep.
could potentially save your life. And I think that speaks volumes. I think it's amazing. I'm just kind of some happier questions. When did you meet your wife, and how have you been able to maintain kind of a healthy mindset with relationships now?
My wife actually helped me out a lot with that. When I met my wife, I was very untrusting and kind of like that stray dog that you meet on the beach in Mexico that you feed your French fries to, that you're not too sure if it's going to bite the fries or your fingers. She taught me a lot about just trusting myself and trusting the people around me and knowing my worth more or less, and saying, if you're not going to meet my energy or if you're not going to accept me for who I am and understand that I mean things, or if I don't mean it, you're not going to be worth my time. If you're not a positive part of my life, you don't have to be here. Which honestly, I have to loop back to this last one before I forget it. If anybody is in that situation situation and they've been told by their abuser, like if you tell your parents or if you tell whoever, I'll hurt you or whatever, don't let that make you be scared of your abuser or of telling somebody, because what they have to say and who they are at that point doesn't matter. If it's a family member, a close friend, a teacher, doctor, whatever, if they're abusing you and you feel like you telling somebody is going to make their life shitty, don't worry about that part, because their life should be fucking shitty in the first place. Whether it's they're going through something at home or they're getting drugged through the prison system. If somebody's abusing another person, regardless of age, sex, race, religious ideas, whatever, if somebody's abusing somebody else in that manner, fuck them. Throw them under the bus. But that's all I have to say about that. I didn't want to forget that.
I think you're so right. And I think it's incredible that you've been able to come here and speak on this. And hopefully you felt comfortable through this whole thing. And hopefully maybe I made you laugh a little bit. But I know it's a little bit easier to talk about when it's just like kind of a regular conversation. And as far as healing goes, I know that you've been healing for 6 years now. And what are some things that you've been able to do for yourself to heal, maybe like therapy or things that you have found therapeutic?
I've went to therapy for about a year. It wasn't anything against the therapy. It was just my therapist and I didn't really quite see eye to eye, and I felt a little bit not demeaned, but like almost disrespected because of a few choices that I make in my personal life. Like I smoke weed, I'll microdose mushrooms every now and then. Everyone's got their thing and their own little fixes. I'm not a big fan of prescription medication, so I try to do the herbal way, I guess. Like, I mean, I'm not a fucking doctor, but I do what feels proper for myself, and it feels okay. And I feel like as long as it's not crack or like anything wild like that, I should be okay. But
Yeah.
the things that I find in life that I actually enjoy is like the typical cliche white girl shit. I'll ride my motorcycle around town listening to Taylor Swift, and I'll see a pot of flowers on the side of the road, and I'll pull my bike over and I'll lift my visor on my helmet and I'll stand there on downtown Main Street and just, that's nice flower. Or if I see the sunset starting to do golden hour for the next 20 minutes or so, I'll race to the side of a hill and find somewhere nice to just sit back and watch the sun go down. It's the little things in life that, kind of matter to me. I like rocks too. That might be something up here, but I like rocks.
Honestly, you're right. Honestly, that's so cool. I love that you have kind of taken a moment to smell the roses, if you will. Take a moment to like kind of slow down and really like realize and take in the moment. But I
Yep.
kind of want to go to really fast what you were saying about the things that you do to help yourself. And it's so funny because I'm from Oregon and that's where I'm from originally. Those things are not strange to me, actually. And anybody that I have as a listener who's from Oregon, they know that ketamine treatments have been used there for therapeutic reasons. A lot of it, of course, under professional care, but
Right.
has helped them with their depression. And even just, I think a couple of years ago, shrooms was also approved to be able to be used in therapeutic settings because it has been proven that it does have some sort of effects and be able to help with things like PTSD and trauma. No, I don't think, again, I think it's just because I'm from Oregon and that's like a thing, but it's becoming much more common. I do think it's pretty cool that therapist didn't put like such a bad taste in your mouth with therapy. I've definitely had therapists that I have not vibed with and who we've disagreed because one of them brought up her political views, which was fucking weird.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, it can get weird. It's just a matter of finding somebody who you do vibe with, and sometimes it's like shoes. You got to find the right one that fits. And I do have to ask, has this been helpful for you, being able to share your story and knowing that you're being heard?
Yeah, honestly, I think just talking about it in general, whether it's in a therapy session or on a podcast, is as long as I can help somebody else or myself at the end of the day, I'm just happy to do it, honestly. But I want to help anybody that I can.
Yeah. And I mean, that's definitely the goal here. So I'm really hoping that I know that this is going to help somebody, even if it's just one person. It's going to help somebody. I am so grateful for your time, for you've been able to come on and again, just being able to help empower you and help share your story.
You were asking, I think you're asking about how or when I met my wife. I met her about a week after I moved back down to Medicine Hat from Edson when I was 22. No, sorry, 23. And I met her online, took her on her first date, and we haven't spent a day apart since.
That's awesome. And it sounds like she kind of came into your life right at the right time because it sounds like that was you were still in your healing journey and she was really meant to be to kind of come in and help you through that and just be your person. And I think it does, whether it's a friend, a significant other, family member, there is going to be at least one person who will become your person. And those
Absolutely.
people do exist. It takes time to find those people, but they do exist. And I think that kind of goes back to what you were saying, where time heals everything. You will find your person out there. I promise you. I can't guarantee it's going to be a significant other, but you'll have a person.
Absolutely. And I keep telling her all the time, we like to joke about conspiracy theory kind of stuff just because, I mean, I'm the typical white guy. I listen to Joe Rogan, on the ride dirt bikes. Like, I drink Budweiser. I'm as white as it can get. And I like to tell her that she's my CIA handler
That's
because
hilarious.
the level of coincidence that we got together on is mind blowing. Like, we're
Yeah.
wearing the same color clothes on our first date. We
No
drank the
way.
same drink. We both are in the Dead Dad Club. Like, there's so many similarities that there's no way she's not my person.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And that's, I mean, that's a lot of things that not everybody, I mean, not a lot of people can connect with you on. And that's crazy. I could see how they definitely put on right new.
Right? But like, I hope they pay her good because motherfuck, I'm a handful.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming on and sharing your story. Again, you are welcome back anytime. Did you want to plug any social media?
Yeah, follow me if you want. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. My TikTok, Darn Hooligans. Super easy to remember, just who I am as a person, a darn hooligan. My
No.
YouTube is Darn Hooligans 762, and everywhere else it's Darn Hooligans. If you want to find me, just look up Darn Hooligans.
Yeah, and we'll definitely put all of that. We'll link all of that as well on Instagram and anywhere that this is posted. So, and
Cool.
you guys, if you want to share your story, please DM me on Instagram at X's and T underscore podcast. I'm here to listen. If you don't want to share, you can share as much or as little as you want. You don't even have to record an episode if you don't want to. I am just here to be ears to be heard. I know that when I was going through things, I really wish that there was something that I had to listen to or to relate to. So if that's you, reach out on Instagram, but definitely follow me on Instagram at XST underscore podcast. Same handle for TikTok, also for YouTube, which might seem kind of bare right now. I'm working on building those things up, I promise. But thanks everybody. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much again, Darian. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Danny.